Well, I'm going to begin firstly with you, Mya. I'm just wondering if you were keen on getting involved right from the offset, or if you needed some sort of convincing from Sean.
I don't think I needed any convincing. At that time, I wasn't doing as great in my life. So, I saw it as an opportunity just to start doing something, just a great project. I had no idea that it was going to be what it is today.
And do you find that the transgender community has an underrepresented voice in sort of cinema and mainstream culture? And if so, is that part of the reason why you felt this project was quite important?
At the time, I guess you could say we weren't being represented that well. But that's not why, right off the bat,
But Sean, what was it about then, this particular story and this whole world then, that just appealed to you as a filmmaker?
Well, I live a half a mile from the intersection of Santa Monica and Highland, so I was drawn to it just because I would pass it often and just look at this area and ask myself, why hasn't Hollywood shown this in any sort of, film and television projects? It doesn't make any sense to me. So that was one of the many reasons. I had also just made a film called Starlet, which focused on another aspect of sex work. Maybe this was just a progression of that. But it was really just an exploration of this one particular location. And Chris Bergosh, who co-wrote the screenplay with me, both of us being cisgender white men from outside that world, we knew that we couldn't go in there imposing any sort of script or plot. We had to basically find it by collaborating, hearing stories, etc. Mya was one of the first people we met who really opened the doors for us and was our passport to that world.
So was there a lot of freedom on this project then? Was it almost sort of, right, this is what I want to achieve in this scene, now I want you guys just to get there of your own accord, or was it quite a rigid script?
No, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, and he kind of ran everything by me before just, saying, oh, we're going to do this.
Yeah, we would give them dialogue sometimes and say, look, if this isn't exactly right, if the vernacular's off, if it's not as accurate as it should be, or if you can make it funnier, or you have another idea where you can take it, throw our stuff out the window. And
that's what we did.
And I have to say that some of my favorite lines in the film, come from Mya and Kiki and my other wonderful actors who are all skilled, at comedic improvisation. And what was one of my favorite lines of yours? I don't know if they're going to show
scene?
it. There was that scene where you say, you look right through me, don't you?
Yeah.
That stuff was just basically improvised on set at the moment. So,
and I was wondering, as well, I mean, obviously with Starlet and now, it's sort of getting behind the facade of the sort of sex sort of industry, and in many ways, kind of very much finding a human being within. Is that something that you're striving to portray?
Yeah, and not just in that industry, but also, I think, looking back at my last 4 films, it seems to, we're trying to find universal stories, universal themes, but apply them to maybe microcosms that people haven't seen before or that have been underrepresented to a certain degree. So I guess that's a good way of putting it.
And I went to Hollywood for LA for the first time last year, and I felt that both in Starlet and in Tangerine, that's the sort of LA that I saw more of. And I was just wondering if because I mean Hollywood, do you think it gets a bit of a kind of romanticized cinema? It's like a romanticized cinematic landscape. Is this the Hollywood you both know much more closely than the one we often see in the movies?
Yeah, we know this Hollywood much more than the one you normally see in the movies is normally like Westwood, or isn't there like Brentwood, and then there's Beverly Hills and Santa Monica. Those are all the places like where the people aren't really like struggling. Most of Hollywood is struggling. Yeah.
It's funny because the industry, I think, sugarcoats the vision of where they live, maybe even if it's subconsciously. When I moved from New York about 4 years ago, and I was taken aback by the fact that, LA is basically shown to the world as Beverly Hills, the Hollywood sign, Walk of Fame, and maybe Venice Beach, and that's it. I mean, there's so many more neighborhood subcultures and just...
Oh, yeah.
Just
it's not as glamorous. I mean, it is, but it isn't. Yeah. Well, it's kind of like when you pass... when you pass the Santa Monica and La Brea mark, that's when it gets ghetto.
And I was wondering, I'm sure you haven't been asked this at all from anyone about shooting on an iPhone.
Right.
I'm just wondering about the kind of the main decision behind that, and whether it, was it something that was purely financial, or was there a kind of creative kind of idea behind it too?
It a little bit of both. It started off from a financial budgetary constraint.
Yeah, we were poor.
Yeah, but basically it led into us immediately having to accept this thing as just as important as a Panavision 35 millimeter camera, because if not, we knew we were going to fail. So we had to take it seriously. We had to find benefits. We had to exploit it, and those benefits revealed themselves to us as we were shooting. So I was able to capture more street life than my previous films. Able to shoot clandestinely. Able to do impromptu crane shots, dolly moves. The film is faster, more hyperactive because of the fact that I was using this tiny little thing that was extremely mobile.
I always thought it almost made it all very kind of identifiable as well, because a lot of us see the world through our phone kind of camera these days as well.
That's a way of looking at it too. Yeah.
But Maya, I was wondering, because was it? Do you find that because it was shot on kind of iPhones, because this is like your first kind of foray into sort of cinema, did it make it a bit more easier for you to kind of get used to and get into it because of the fact you didn't have kind of a whole crew with loads of kind of huge cameras kind of on you at all times? Did it make it a bit more kind of comforting?
No, and I just had an interview right before you, and we talked about that same thing. But no, I feel like for me, everything comes natural. It's quite obvious. Don't look into the camera, So
that one.
Yeah, it's just quite obvious. Don't do that.
And can you see yourself sort of exploring cinema further now? Do you want to sort of do more movies?
Oh yeah, I have. I did another movie 6 months ago, and I just signed to do another movie, which I film in December. And then I have 2 other parts for 2 other movies, and then I just did an audition for another movie. And we're also working on trying to get a TV show.
You have to fill me in. There are lots of developments I haven't heard about yet.
Well, we haven't talked in a while.
TV show you're making, apparently.
Because he's always traveling to Germany and every other place.
Not just to Germany, yes. Okay.
Well, thank you. I was just probably stop it there. Thank you so much for your time today. It's really appreciated.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey!